Over the last few months, we've all been dealing with this quote-unquote COVID crisis, which means very restricted transportation, very restricted physical movement, which then triggered some economic disruptions and in some cases, economic slowdowns. Most of us have been struggling. There's been a few companies that have not been struggling at all. In fact, they have been benefiting from this crisis to amazing extents. Zoom is one of them. Zoom was a company that probably most of you had never heard of prior to February or March, but they have become ubiquitous. And as you may have noticed, the market capitalization of the company has gone through the roof. But this hasn't gone completely smoothly and easily. If you're a new entrant and a company disrupting the industry, and you're a startup, a quasi-startup, how do you communicate with established companies and in some cases, conservative companies? So one of the things Zoom did is they hired a number of excellent CIOs or ex-CIOs, so people who had done the CIO job and or could talk to CIOs. And this was an excellent move to help them connect with companies that needed the Zoom products and services, but might have been too conservative to really accommodate them. One of the folks that Zoom hired is Magnus Falk. And Magnus had been a CIO and had been in this industry for a number of years, starting in consulting, starting in the army actually, but then moving into a consulting world with Accenture in particular, and then being a CIO for many years in Credit Suisse, and then working with a number of companies. And over the last few months and few years, Magnus has been working with Zoom, among other companies. He has agreed to be with us again for a short session to share with us his views on what is about to change, what is changing already, and what is about to continue to change with this working from home, with this physical separation world that we've entered. And he wants to talk about two aspects of this. One is, of course, the inner world. How is our world of work changing? But Magnus is also saying, hey, wait a second, your customer is also at home. And how is that changing? So Magnus, thank you very much for joining us. I think you'll be sharing a few thoughts with us for a few minutes, and then we'll get into a Q&A.
Thank you very much, Jean-Francois. I hope I'm coming through loud and clear. So if you just bear with me, I'm just going to share a slide or two. Well, what a lovely introduction, Jean-Francois. Thank you very much indeed. I'm delighted to be joining you. I'm very grateful to the IMD for the invitation to speak. I'm Magnus Falk, and I am going to talk about Zoom and what I've observed about this emerging world of work, the ever-changing world of work and business. Jean-Francois presented many of my credentials. I've had a 30 plus year career in technology, really helping businesses innovate using technology, enhancing my skills in consulting firm, and then being a CIO and a CTO in two completely different environments, financial services and the UK government. And as part of my portfolio career, I do talk to technology and business leaders about the opportunities from using Zoom's video platform as a Zoom CIO advisor in EMEA. And this work from home phenomenon is beginning to be understood, but the customer at home is a fascinatingly different proposition. And how is this changing the barriers to entry, and what innovations are emerging? Well, I've been really fortunate to have a front row seat at this movie through my role at Zoom. And I plan to share what I'm seeing. And it's great to have an opportunity to share my views and take your questions on your reactions to them. First, a bit about Zoom. As Jean-Francois said, last year I had to explain what Zoom was. But today people generally know some of our story. But I think it's important to tell a bit more about the story to explain this front seat point of view. And many are surprised to learn that Zoom Story is actually a love story. When our founder and CEO, Eric Yuan, was a fresher in college, he regularly took a 10-hour train ride one way to visit his girlfriend, who is now his wife. And he detested these train rides and used to imagine other ways to visit her without traveling. And this daydreaming eventually became the basis for Zoom. But Zoom's mission is absolutely straightforward. It's about securely unifying all your communication needs into just one platform that's video first and purpose-built in the cloud. And as I'm sure you already know, Zoom is simple to use, it's reliable, it's secure. And the best praise we hear from our customers, we hear it all the time, is that Zoom just works. And it was founded in 2011, as mentioned by Eric Yuan. He was an engineering leader fresh from Cisco's WebEx division, who, after his product re-engineering plans were turned down, he left to create a video platform fit for the internet era. And since its Silicon Valley start, the company's grown to over 3,000 employees, 19 offices around the world. They're all closed for now, but we are hoping. And our platform is run on 19 globally distributed data centers to handle meeting traffic with surge capacity on selected cloud services. And Zoom went public in 2019. It's listed on NASDAQ. And we've had strong revenues, which have grown very quickly. As Jean-François mentioned, our Q2 results were very well received. And with Q3 being revealed at the end of November, so no forward statements from me today. Zoom is innovative, developing hundreds of features every year. And the platform offers software as a service, providing this platform service across three major segments depicted here. Firstly, desktop and mobile communications in the light blue. That's the video and audio meetings, what Zoom's best known for, but also Zoom Phone, a fully functional IP phone solution, chat, and the webinars that we're using today. Secondly, the platform supports conference rooms and spaces in orange, whether supporting legacy equipment or Zoom rooms, hardware with Zoom already installed, and fully integrated digital signage and scheduling display software. And the third segment is integration with line of business applications in the darker blue, through application programming interfaces and software development kits, and the Zoom marketplace, in which over 1,000 commercial applications offer Zoom integration. Zoom as a platform itself is readily integrated with other platforms. And across Zoom, the desktop and mobile work seamlessly with the conference rooms, as do both with the line of business and commercial applications. Zoom provides a world-leading video service for every use case. And so before the pandemic, Zoom was a successful, rapidly growing provider of friction-free video, had thousands of successful businesses as clients around the world. Recently being floated was that very rare unicorn, a Silicon Valley startup that was immediately profitable. The customer's prospects looked good, the company's prospects looked good, and the share price had already appreciated from the float. Zoom was making clients and investors happy, and it was a great place to work. And we were pleased to announce in December 2019 that over 10 million participants were using the platform every day. And when the first lockdowns were announced, Eric wanted to help. He announced that Chinese residents affected by the lockdown would be no longer constrained by their time limits on the free use of Zoom. And as further countries were affected, he followed this up with announcements that schools in many countries could have unconstrained access to the platform. At the same time, those affected by the pandemic were finding that Zoom could help as they reinvented their lives and the way they worked, including the British Prime Minister. And as a consequence, the number of Zoom meeting participants began to skyrocket. Eric's desire to help was a judgment made using a deep knowledge of the platform. As well as being the CEO, he's the engineer who conceived the platform and knew that it was built to scale in the cloud, in theory, infinitely. And he was right. In time, I think business schools and computer science students will study how Zoom was able to scale by a factor of 10 and then triple it. And it's not just the number of meeting participants, that the time people are spending connected on Zoom, and some of us tell them they get a little bit tired of it, has surged. The figures just speak for themselves. And these increases were achieved globally, supported by the distributed data centers and dedicated networks. And the scalable architecture delivered seamless connectivity from businesses, from the biggest of banks to the startup yoga teacher. And though the engineering of Zoom was undoubtedly important, the story behind the story at Zoom is the company culture. The culture is one of achieving happiness. Eric spent so long knowing that his customers were unhappy that he made this a defining feature of what drives Zoom. And to do this, we have to care, and care is a core value. We care for the company, customers, teammates, ourselves, and our communities. But Zoom's culture is probably a topic all of its own for another time. So turning to the future of work and business. Well, we've all experienced this wave of digital transformation that's changed the way we book cars, arrange holidays, buy books and groceries. I struggle to think of a single industry where digital transformation wasn't an agenda item. However, many businesses were laggards. COVID-19 has changed the dynamic entirely by forcing leaders to rethink how work was done and then what their customers now needed. And I thought I worked back in the future, back in 2010. I was part of a global team. Every day we spent hours in front of screens in darkened rooms. And I used webinars to connect with thousands of staff all over Europe, Middle East, and Africa. These were the easiest meetings in the world. Just grab a cup of coffee and talk about the business and technology to connect with your people. We had video deployed to 60,000 desktops. However, it did seem that it was only when IT people were present and supported that video was actually used. It was too clunky for normal use, and it was eye-wateringly expensive. But Zoom's platform changed the clunkiness and the cost to use, but it took a pandemic to show what was truly possible. And so as a side effect of the nightmare that we've all been plunged into, we've all been thrust into this global experiment of how to work differently and what our customers now need. It was mostly done at speed, with necessity as a sponsor of action. And for many, overnight, they went from working at work to living at work. And with these changes came experimentation, invention, adjustment, all the key inputs to evolution. And the future is being invented right now. And I know I work with Zoom, but I'm sure you'll agree that video has become the new audio. Why would anyone want to buy a new desktop handset for their office or workspace when it's so easier to communicate by video, or put a Zoom phone direct onto your employees' mobile handsets, personal or corporate? And as with any innovative era, it spells the end for past innovations. And I believe the Office desktop phone is as evocative of not keeping up as, say, the Sony Walkman would be in the consumer world. My first observation is that automation is accelerating. It's that do or die moment in many sectors. Just imagine what IMD would be doing if they had not whole-scale implemented the ability to interact with you all remotely at scale. And I've talked to the team. They've done a fabulous job. I'm really respectful of how you've embraced the technology. And according to Bill Gates, this might be one of those special years when 10 years innovation in a single year is a possibility. And much of this innovation is being driven to reduce human contact. As a result, the way we interact with doctors, particularly that initial triage or ongoing treatment stage, has changed fundamentally. And it's increasingly possible for the most talented surgeons to perform specialist surgery from hundreds of miles away, even across continents. Education's looking very different. Some of this is less than ideal, but the virtual campus, which was already growing before the pandemic, may become more normal afterwards, and certainly an option to reduce expense and increase the accessibility of education. Even sectors steeped in tradition and filled with some of the most procedural people in the world have embraced new ways of doing things. And necessity has triggered the most remarkable changes to everyday familiar scenes in democratic institutions, like this image from the 750-year-old UK Parliament now operating on Zoom. And also in democratic campaigning, where all sides are using new techniques to reach voters in these difficult times, and voters who may never have been willing to turn out to a rally may be willing to hear what you say in the comfort of their own home. Even audience participation has become different, though I wonder if this will survive the pandemic. At Zoom, we've been helping our clients to reopen offices and meeting rooms. So now you can just walk in, and to safely engage with the receptionist, you just talk at a screen and the virtual receptionist can welcome you. The receptionist may well be in another city or country. And clients are using Zoom's technology to monitor usage against safety policies and give staff guidance information at a room, desk and floor level. One of my favorite innovations is just around the corner. Already you can talk to Zoom rooms using voice commands, integrated into the usual suspects, Zoom join meeting. But we wanted to take it further to allow safe collaboration in shared spaces. And the picture shows a control of a Zoom room from an individual's mobile. The phone Zoom app allows automatic pairing and an option to control the Zoom room directly, giving access to the rich functionality without having to touch any shared room panel. My second observation is that business landscape is shifting, and the innovation continues in the way businesses approach and interact with their customers. Iconic brands are inventing themselves, or at least their business processes. For example, HSBC, the banking giant, have adapted their mortgage process to include video appointments. No more having to trundle into a bank branch. Well, they're closed anyway, and who wants to do that? Another example is John Lewis, that favourite amongst British shoppers, are providing options to their customers who can't visit for a similar personal service. Another from retail, car shopping, an option to take a look round by video. A friend of mine just recently bought a €40,000 new car using a click and collect service. And as leading institutions like Goldman's, Nationwide, Facebook announce that their employees can now choose how they work, real estate portfolio owners are realizing they need to change what they provide. Whole cities are going to have to alter their role. And I think new living options are going to emerge. Well, they're starting to emerge, because you've heard of boom towns. Now there are Zoom towns, close to the places where people would like to live, national parks, ski areas, but previously couldn't. And people are making choices that weren't previously an option. And interoperable platforms are supercharging innovation by making what was previously possible in years now possible in mere weeks. Barriers to entry have lowered across the board. You can buy the compute power that used to cost millions to establish for pennies on your credit card. Full retail and delivery servicing are available as percentage of sales, and marketing can be paid through clicks, achieved influencer by influencer. Another example of innovation here is Zoom's announcement of Zoom apps. Zoom's always had APIs and SDKs, which I talked about previously, but what it became clear was we needed to help customers enrich their meetings by providing more third-party functionality directly accessible in the meeting. And Zoom Apps allows you to run your application within the Zoom client. There are 25 launch party partners, but no end of possibilities to collaborate, do deals, and follow specific business processes. And what we're seeing is businesses are being created at the fastest ever rate in the US. And this is probably due to that mixture of necessity and opportunity, but it's being facilitated by technology platforms. And to help these small business creators, Zoom has also announced On Zoom, a platform allow you to run a business where video is the delivery mechanism, integrating booking, payment, and delivery in a framework that can easily be leveraged by SMEs to continue their new pandemic business without the fuss. So I think the final big trend I'll talk about is the rise of 5G. Much of the home-based innovation today is powered through broadband connectivity at home. 4G is used but can be disappointing. 5G may shift this landscape entirely. 5G will allow employment by any company in any connected global location. And connection is much easier over the air than through wires. Although this is going to have the tax professionals scratching their head about transfer pricing, it's going to be good for people and for locations that were previously far away. Work will be more organized around life than life organized around work. And work's going to become distributed more across locations, languages, and split between the home and office location. Again, Zoom is trying to help people here. Good example is the use of AI in Zoom rooms to identify the participants and present them to remote participants in the standard gallery view, democratizing the meeting and leveling up the experience for remote staff in a hybrid meeting. The second is transcriptions. These are great to support those with accessibility issues, as well as helping with accents and for those working in languages that aren't their strongest. The transcription can always be exported as well for later checking. And Zoom supports English natively, and transcriptions as services are available in other languages on the Zoom app marketplace. And also the language interpretation feature is very supportive of multilingual workplaces. Huge respect to IMD for supporting a Russian translation service today. And thank you, Maria, for all your hard work. Currently, this option provides channels in different languages selected by the participant. And today, this is a bring your own interpreter service. A human is required to provide the interpretation for these channels. However, it's pretty clear where this feature could innovate to. So all this innovation is allowing companies to contemplate the big step of allowing their workers to work where, when, and how they want. But the same applies to customers, giving them options now. You never know what they will choose. And technology is changing the nature of work and is the enabling factor in this new digital workplace. And the judgment of that technology is brutal. If it's not simple, seamless, and frictionless, you can just forget it. And the hybrid workforce wants to be able to do work on their terms at a time that allows them to be their best, in a way that allows them to fully contribute, and understanding how their work fits into the broader mission. All this is possible. So the rules for work have changed. The limitations of the past have proved wrong. People can be highly productive and effective remotely. You don't have to live close by to collaborate well. Customers at home need different services. It's not all plain sailing. For example, the creation of online serendipitous moments is challenging, that kind of meeting in the lift or meeting on the way to the cafeteria. But we are seeing companies, leaders, and customers change. Some are taking advantage of this, and a fundamental part will be to allow people to work and customers to consume where, when, and how they want. So thank you so much for watching and listening. I hope you found this interesting, thought-provoking, and educational. And now I'm going to open myself to some questions. So let me just unshare.
Very good. Thank you very much, Magnus. One of the questions is Zoom a platinum sponsor of IMD? Is this session a big ad? The answer is no. There were indeed a number of Zoom-related comments, and I think it is fair because this is the environment that Magnus knows particularly well these days. But I think there were also a number of comments and a number of provocative thoughts that were not only a Zoom ad. So a few questions. One of them, face-to-face interaction is key, and in particular, face-to-face allows us to look at one another, this eye contact. And it's true that right now I'm looking into the camera, but I'm not looking at you, Magnus, and I don't see you. So is there something that can be done to make it easier to kind of see you, look at the people, but also create eye contact?
Yeah, I mean, so just there, I moved you directly into the middle of my screen and just below my camera. I'm now looking directly at you. I feel that I've got eye contact with you, even though I know we're disintermediated by various data centers and thousands of miles of cable. But actually just positioning people right on the screen and using your camera correctly. And also, this is really crucial, turning off your self view. So you're not looking at yourself, but you're looking at the person you're speaking with. Those are all factors in having a really successful interaction over video.
Do you credit COVID with the turning on of the camera in meetings so that we went from conference calls to video meetings?
It was definitely happening in different companies at different rates. So as I spoke, there were 10 million meeting participants who were using their cameras on the most part. When people adopt a service that works, I think they do generally do that. But it definitely happens at different rates. And of course, the pandemic has been a massive trigger for people trying something different, because we're all kind of, you know, we'd like other people to change, but we'd like to kind of do what we do. But the pandemic forced everyone to experiment with things. And, you know, the cocktail hours with your parents over a video conference, you know, oh, well, I put the camera on. Oh, well, I can do that for work too. So yes and no. I think it was coming, but it's now come a lot quicker.
A Zoom-related question. Cybersecurity was an issue. I know we had this issue on occasion. We had clients saying, don't want to use Zoom, security issue. Have you guys addressed this, and is this still an issue?
Well, we were really humbled by the huge take on of Zoom, and it was clear when we took so many people onto our service that it wasn't fine-tuned for consumers just picking up and running with the platform, and so we had to change all the defaults to make it safe for people to use. And we could have done a much better job in knowing that was coming, but quite frankly, it came at us, and we discovered lots of things. So we think we've solved that, and we've kind of introduced a whole series of working practices that make it safer to interact over video. We've also introduced enhanced encryption and end-to-end encryption that give people real peace of mind that if they've got a real secure meeting, that they can handle the keys to the meeting themselves, and so not even Zoom can access any of those keys. So I think we have addressed those meetings. I mean, clearly it was a difficult time when you go from being something that you have to make people interested in to something that everyone is interested in immediately. And there's lots of publicity because Zoom in the title of any publicity caused clicks. So people wanted to say things that drove advertising to their sites. But we made mistakes. We think we fixed them. We always want to listen if we've got to make any more improvements, but security is absolutely top of mind at Zoom.
Do you discuss concerns about whether the volume will go down post-COVID? So how do you, right now, of course, Zoom has almost become, just like Kleenex, a generic word, right? Is this a face-to-face or is this a Zoom? Do you anticipate that the growth will continue, or do you see at some point some plateauing and some return?
Well, I mean, clearly the genie is out of the bottle. And what many surveys have pointed to is that people don't want to go back to what they did before. They don't want to have the commute every day. They don't think working in an office is right for them in the future. What we're seeing is though people don't want to go back, but they want a bit of both. They want to be able to work from home, and they want to have some way of having interactions with their team. So we are going to be going into a hybrid work style. So I think the prevalence of capability to interact remotely as effectively as you would from the office will be with us forever. I also think businesses that take advantage of rich video in their business processes will have a competitive advantage because they'll be accessing customers who might not be able to come to them. So I think we'll see that grow even more dramatically. When I talk to some customers, they're all experimenting with things and they're realizing that it's working and they're doing some more experimentation. So I think, for example, the number of applications with Zoom built in available from the Zoom app marketplace has gone up 10 times, gone from 100 to nearly 1,000 in the space of a year. That wouldn't have happened if businesses didn't realize that actually this is something for the future. So goodness knows, but I think the genie's out of the bottle. I don't think people are going to go back to exactly the way they did it before. And so as a consequence, video's here to stay. It's also much nicer. I mean, I don't like having a phone call anymore. I want to see the person I'm talking with.
By the way, there was one question about the quality of your image is so good. I imagine that you have probably state-of-the-art equipment.
Bought on Amazon for 20 quid.
One of the points that you made, which really struck me, you said increasingly work will be organized around life. Now, I think that until now, many of us are observing the opposite, which is that because there's been a lot of work from home, work has been encroaching more and more onto family life, and people, I think many of us are working longer rather than shorter. So tell us how you think of this work will be organized around life.
Well, I think what the remote interaction allows you to do, and this takes discipline, and it takes getting used to it, and it takes managers knowing that this is the way you want to work, and allowing it, that people will start scheduling their calendars, scheduling their days in order to make their life more possible. One of the huge benefits, I think, of remote working is the ability to retain those who might leave careers for life change, life issues. Maybe they've had a child, maybe they've become injured, but remote allows them to continue working though their life changes have their life situation is altered. But it does take discipline. I mean, booking out your calendar to say, dropping off the kid at school and making it published so that everyone can see it. Right. Know that you're going to be away. But then choosing that you actually like working from 7 to 10, because actually that's the moment when everyone's asleep and you can do your best work. And so people will start being able to do that more. Clearly, the pressure will always be on if you're remote to, you're always available. But I think people will embrace that. And we've seen that, that's a lot of advice that's coming through, which is take control, otherwise it will control you.
As I'm listening to you, I realize this may also require changes in the leadership style and in the leadership expectations, because what you just said is, look, if we accept that this intrusion of work in our lives is not going to be eternal, clearly there are issues of sustainability around people being able to separate quote unquote work life from private life, then it means that working from home will have to quickly evolve into also flexible work hours. And flexible work hours is indeed going to require basically knowing that people are at home or maybe not, or so this is actually quite significant from an expectation of leaders.
I think it's an expectation leaders point, and also a how one manages one's workflows, because you if your work is all around everyone having to be in the same place at the same time, then maybe you need to rethink about that. Now, clearly you will need some of that, and I would think that offices will tend to be used for team days or specific get-together events, which I'd welcome. I think it's brilliant. People need people, but I think the way we interact is going to change, and management practice will follow well, or hopefully lead us to that better place.
And this, I think, is a point that each of us on this session need to think about. It's right now, some of us are thinking about work from home policies, but I think this is much more profound, what we're discussing just now. It's not only work from home policies, it's also expectations of the leader, and it's also what kind of things will we do from home versus we will do in the office, which will have implications in terms of the way offices are being designed.
Jean-Francois, don't get me wrong. I think there are different approaches for different types of work. So we're told by some of our organizations that they, especially service desks, where they have a high bandwidth team where there's probably one expert and 3 or 4 people who handle many calls but need the expert to help them for the most difficult calls. What they're telling us is they create a Zoom room that all the people are in all the time, and so they're listening to each other, to replicate the high bandwidth service environment that they're used to at work. And Some people are doing that on the trading floor. So people trading together are always in the same room. So in those instances, people will have to work the same times or be in shifts. But not all work is like that. You know, you can think legal review of stuff, producing specifications, responding to customer queries. You know, those sorts of things don't have to be done all at the same time.
I think that what the thought I would like to leave all of our viewers with is, I think that the questions that we're going to have to answer over the next few weeks and months will go way beyond, again, quote unquote, work from home policies, but will really be about how can and how should the work be rethought? What implications does this have, again, for expectations we have of one another, and also, again, about design of workspaces? Magnus, thank you very much. Look, there's a long list of questions. Some of them, of course, are technology related, like when are you guys going to allow us to have holographic projections and so on? Is it okay if we send those to you? And maybe you try to see if you can give us just a few quick answers on some of them. Would that be okay?
Absolutely, yeah. Send away, Jean-François.
Okay.
I'd love to see your participants' question, because I know you teach the leaders of the world. So you know, it's great to hear the leaders' questions.
Well, there's quite a few questions that we didn't have time to address because they have a 7-minute break before their next session, and we do need to give them a break. That much we have learned during this crisis. Magnus, thank you very much. And again, a great afternoon to all of you, and a great conclusion to OWP.